UFC 316 is a little over a week away, and so in today's video, I'm going to be going through and giving you guys my full card predictions, breaking down every single matchup, prelims, and the main card, picking the winner, and then how I think they get it done. As always, would love to hear your thoughts. Drop your picks down below in the comment section. There will be timestamps for every single matchup if you guys want to jump around. But let's just dive right into it here, and we are going to start off on the prelims where we have Quillan Salkilld taking on Yanal Ashmouz. And Salkilld is coming off a super impressive UFC debut, had a 19-second knockout win. He is 8-1 as a pro, very big frame for the lightweight division, 6 foot tall, 75-inch reach. He's pretty well rounded, obviously has power on the feet like we saw in his last fight, but also, poses a little bit of a wrestling threat. I think he has 3 submission wins on his pro record. So overall, a pretty interesting fighter here in this weight class. Then for Yanal Ashmouz, he's actually also 8-1 as a pro. There's going to be a pretty real size disadvantage for Ashmouz. He's only 5'9" with a 68-inch reach. Already kind of a stockier build for the lightweight weight class, but he's also going up against someone who does just have a very, very large frame. Ashmouz is super powerful on the feet. He actually went to his wrestling in his last win in the UFC, but we've seen him kind of struggle to close the distance on certain fighters. In his loss to Chris Duncan, was just kind of getting a pace put on him, just could not find the target. I think he's going to have a pretty similar issue in this matchup. I think Salkilld is going to keep him at range. I think he's going to use that frame, and I think he's going to pick him apart from the outside. So I don't think he's going to get the finish, but I'm going to go with Quillan Salkilld by decision. Then we have a middleweight fight here between Azamat Murzakanov and Brendson Ribeiro. Light heavyweight fight here between these two. I kind of feel like this is just a mismatch here with the matchmaking. Azamat is ranked number 12 in the weight class. He is undefeated as a pro, 14-0. He's 4-0 in the UFC. He is coming off of a 6-month suspension, tested positive for some sort of steroid. So this is his first fight back off of that suspension. 3 of his 4 wins in the UFC have been by knockout. He's landed a knockdown in all 4 of his UFC fights and is also shown to have really solid takedown defense at 83%. He's only been taken down 1 single time in the UFC. On the other side here with Ribeiro, he is 2-2 in the promotion. One of those wins was pretty much like a 50-50 split decision. Could have gone either way. He's certainly a finisher. 16 of his 17 wins are by finish. He has 9 knockout wins, 7 submissions, so fairly well-rounded. He's going to have a real size advantage in this matchup. Murzakanov is very undersized for the weight class. He's only 5'10" with a 71.5-inch reach. Like that type of frame, I want to say that's like Patchy mixes, exact measurables, and Patchy's fighting down to 135, Murzakanov all the way up at 205. Ribeiro here, 6'3", 81-inch reach, so he is going to be the much larger human in this matchup. He's super explosive, he's dangerous, but is also a little bit reckless and can kind of leave himself open. I think his first UFC fight was a round 1 knockout loss. So I'm going to go with Murzakanov here, even though he's smaller, maybe not quite as explosive. I think he's the way more technical fighter here. I think he finds an early knockout. I'm going Murzakanov round 1 KO. Now moving over to a fight that I think is 100% going to end in a finish, we have Khaos Williams taking on Uros. These are 2 very, very dangerous strikers. Khaos Williams is 6-3 in the UFC. He has 4 knockouts in the promotion. 3 of those have come within a minute and 30 seconds of the first round, so he can get you out of there very, very quickly. Also durable. He's never been knocked out in his pro career, only finished once, and that was by submission. He's also never even been dropped in the UFC. So someone who's going out there, super dangerous on the feet, but also not really getting affected by what's coming back at him. I guess kind of a downside here for Khaos Williams, he pretty much poses like 0 grappling threat. He has not landed a single takedown in the UFC. So he's going out there, he's going to live or die with his striking. He does stay pretty active on the feet, 5.36 significant strikes per minute. On the other side here with Uros, he is 10-3 as a pro and has never been to a decision. So this dude is kill or be killed. He has 8 knockout wins, 2 submission wins. His 3 losses, 1 was by KO, his most recent fight, and then 2 submission losses. He has a 4-3 record in the UFC. Like I mentioned, he is coming off a KO loss, and it was very, very quick, only lasted 31 total seconds. When we look at 2 of his UFC losses, they've kind of come from him just being thoroughly out-grappled. That's not really a concern here in this matchup. I don't think Khaos Williams is going to come out and all of a sudden be like a super dominant control grappler with like submission threat. Like, I just don't think that's going to be on the table here. I think this fight is definitely going to take place on the feet. I think both these guys have the finishing upside, but in my opinion, where Khaos Williams kind of stands out is his proven durability, and then also just the fact that he has experience going 3 rounds. We've never seen him get knocked down in the UFC. We have seen him, fight in some high-paced fights, go to decision, win decisions in the promotion. We just have not seen that out of Uros Medic. So I think this fight is going to end by finish, but I just think like Khaos Williams has that upside if it does go long. So I'm going to go with Khaos Williams round 1 KO. We know he's super dangerous early on in fights. We just saw Medic get caught super early on in a fight. I think Khaos Williams can do something similar, so we're going with round 1 KO. Then we have a matchup here between Ju Sang Yu and Jeka Saragih. For Yu here, this is his UFC debut. He has an 8-0 pro record, so undefeated, 3 knockouts, 1 submission win, 4 decisions. He's primarily a striker, has solid boxing, can string together solid combinations, also mixes in like some creative spinning kicks. He'll also kind of mix in his wrestling. He's not only a striker, that is where he does most of his work, but he can mix in his wrestling if he needs to. On the other side here with Saragih, he has a 14-4 record as a pro, 9 knockout wins, 4 submissions, so primarily a finisher. He does have 2 UFC losses to Anshul Jubilee and Weston Wilson. Like, those are 2 kind of tough names to have losses to in the UFC. Like, it's not great losing to pretty much like the bottom of the barrel of UFC competition. He has been finished also in all 4 of his losses, 3 submission losses, been knocked out 1 time. I expect you to kind of just come in here and be controlled in this matchup. I think he's the sharper guy on the feet. I think he's more efficient. I think he is more defensively responsible. So I think he's going to get Saragih out of there. I think maybe the first round, kind of a feel-out situation. Maybe Saragih uses a lot of energy, and I think Yu's going to end up knocking him out in the second round. Then we're going to be moving all the way up to heavyweight, where we have Serghei Spivac taking on Waldo Cortes-Acosta. This is kind of like Waldo Cortes-Acosta's opportunity to really jump into the deep end here in the heavyweight weight class. This is a grappler versus striker matchup, Spivac being the grappler, Cortes-Acosta being the striker. For Spivac, he has been a very successful guy in this heavyweight division. He averages 4.56 takedowns per 15 minutes, has a 65% takedown accuracy. First off, that's just like a great percentage to be hitting your takedowns at, a great clip. And then also like volume takedowns. He can consistently take dudes down. I mean, nearly 5 takedowns or 4.5 takedowns per 15 minutes at heavyweight. That is very impressive. When we look at his last 10 UFC fights, he has a 7-3 record with his 3 losses pretty much coming to like the elite of the weight class. The 3 losses have been to Tom Aspinall, Ciryl Gane, and Jailton Almeida. We're looking at some guys that are maybe more in like the Cortes-Acosta range, like the Derek Lewis's, the Augusto Sakai's. He landed 6 takedowns against both of those dudes. For Cortes-Acosta here, he is 6-1 in the UFC, pushes a pretty high pace for the weight class, 5.76 significant strikes per minute, has kind of faced weaker competition, has really just like fought a lot of the bottom of the barrel heavyweights. And like he's a striker, but doesn't have a ton of finishing upside, especially for heavyweight. In 7 UFC fights, he only has 2 knockdowns. Has had fine takedown defense, 66%, but in his 1 loss to Marcos Rogerio de Lima, he was taken down 3 times, controlled. That's primarily the reason why he lost that fight. So we've seen Spivac's grappling has been very effective versus like the non-elite athletes of the weight class, like Aspinall, Gane, Almeida. These guys just like don't move like your typical heavyweights. These are dudes where like if they grew up in America, they'd probably be like pass rushers in the NFL. Aspinall, just a freak athlete. Ciryl Gane, insane movement for heavyweight. Almeida is just like potentially the best wrestler we've ever seen at heavyweight. So like, I just don't think those fights are really comparable to what we're going to get here out of Waldo Cortes-Acosta. And we've seen Spivac have success against pretty much everyone else. So I do think he's going to be able to get his wrestling going. And even if he can't like fully control Cortes-Acosta, Cortes-Acosta hasn't had the finishing upside where I feel like, he's just going to nuke Spivac. Like, Spivac isn't amazing on the feet, but I do think he can hang in there. So I think Spivac kind of wears him out in the first round, clinches him up, potentially gets him down. And then I think he finds a ground and pound finish in the second round. So going with Spivac by TKO. Then we're going to have Ariane Lipski de Silva taking on Wang. I actually think this has the potential to be a pretty fun matchup here. Lipski's Achilles heel throughout her career has been her takedown defense. She actually does have like solid offensive jiu-jitsu, but 6 of her 7 UFC losses have come from just her pretty much being like completely out-grappled by her opponent. She is pretty dangerous on the feet if she's just allowed to go in there and stand. For Wang here, had a lot of hype, super impressive debut, kind of got set back in her second UFC fight, got a club and sub L, and I feel like the hype has like kind of died down a little bit, but she bounced back. She's now 2-1 in the UFC. She's a former very high-level kickboxer, super dangerous on the feet, possesses some power, but she can also grapple. She had a submission win on the road to the UFC. In her most recent fight, she outlanded Bruno 103-31. So I think this has the potential to be just a straight-up stand-up fight. But I also wouldn't be shocked if Wang kind of mixed things up, even though you would think her strength is in the striking department. We did see her shoot a couple of times on Bruno, landed a couple of takedowns, didn't rack up any control time, but I like that she at least makes an effort to kind of mix in those takedowns. We've seen Lipski get finished in 4 of her last 5 fights, but 3 of those were pretty much her just getting like worn out on the ground. Don't really think that's going to happen here with Wang. I do think both these women could potentially find a finish, but I'm going to lean towards Wang here by decision. I think on the feet, I do think she's just going to be the more sharper, more dangerous striker, and I think she could mix things up, potentially bank some control time or just work in the clinch a little bit. Now, I think this might be the prelim headliner. We have Bruno Silva taking on Joshua Van. Bruno Silva has a 4-3 record in the UFC. Prior to his last fight against Manel Kape, where he was knocked out, he'd actually racked up 4 straight wins, all of them by finish. The issue with Bruno Silva is he's really kind of hit a wall when he's going up against really legit competition, like the locked-in top 15, top 10 guys in the weight class. His 3 losses have come to Manel Kape, who I mentioned, Tagir Ulanbekov, and then David Dvorak. Believe Tagir's in the top 10 right now. Dvorak was a dude who had been hanging around the top 10. I think he's out of the UFC at this point. I think in this matchup, like Silva's going to want to come in, and I think he's going to want to wrestle. He averages almost 2 takedowns per 15 minutes, but he's still dangerous on the feet. He's landed knockdowns in all 4 of his UFC wins. On the other side here with Joshua Van, he's just a super fun prospect, 23 years old, 6-1 record in the UFC, puts together just some insane volume on the feet. For a guy who's had 7 fights in the UFC, I can't remember seeing a number this high for significant strikes per minute. He is all the way up at 8.1 strikes per minute. That is insane. Typically, like you're getting to like 5+. That's a pretty high pace. You're rarely seeing 6+. Van is above 8 at this point. He's landed 118 plus strikes in 4 of his 7 fights. So just like if he's allowed to stand on the feet and just go to work, he is going to put up some insane numbers. Also pretty solid at stopping takedowns, 80% takedown defense. And if you do get him down, he's tough to hold there. We saw him have a real test against Ray Saruya, a really good kind of young wrestling prospect in this weight class. And he got taken down a few times, held down a little bit, but clearly won the fight, really held his own. I think Ray Saruya is a better wrestler than Bruno Silva. So I think this fight is primarily going to take place on the feet, and I have to favor Joshua Van there. I'm going to go with Joshua Van by decision. He could always be live for a finish, but the majority of UFC wins are by decision, so I'll go with Van with a pretty clear decision win, obviously unanimous. Then moving on to potentially the fight I'm most excited for, it's definitely up there, Mario Bautista taking on Patchy Mix. I have wanted to see Patchy Mix in the UFC for a very long time. I think you could make the case that Patchy Mix is the toughest matchup for Merab in this weight class. I'm not saying he's the best bantamweight in the world, not even saying he's the second best behind Merab, but I think stylistically, he poses some real challenges for Merab with his submission skills. This is his UFC debut, 20-1 record as a pro. He has 3 Bellator title wins, and I think sometimes people like to just dismiss some of these dudes in other promotions, champions. They don't think they're UFC level. I think you can make a strong case that when Patchy Mix was in that Bellator bantamweight division, that was the best weight class outside of the UFC in any promotion, right? He has wins over Kyoji Horiguchi, Sergio Pettis. Both those dudes had success in the UFC. Rafion Stotts, 2 wins against Magomed Magomedov. Magomedov was Petr Yan's, I think, only loss before he got into the UFC. So really solid resume here for Patchy Mix. Like I mentioned earlier on, he is a huge bantamweight. I think I said he had the same measurables as Azamat Murzakanov. Now that I'm looking at it, Patchy Mix is actually taller. He's 5'11" with a 71.5-inch reach. He is an elite grappler. 13 of his 20 wins are by submission. He is great at getting to the back, racking up that control time. Also has a very good offensive guillotine. If you want to clinch with him, you're doing it at your own risk. For Bautista here, I think he's kind of getting slept on a little bit. I do think overall, he's underrated after that Jose Aldo fight. Obviously, kind of a tough fight to watch. I didn't think he won. Also didn't handle himself in the best way. If you have a clunker fight and you're just kind of holding on to a legend at the end, sometimes you just got to take the hit and be like, I did what I needed to do to get the win. That's not really how I fight. Going out and then blaming Jose Aldo, probably not the best look, but, you live and you learn here. He's on a 7-fight win streak. I do think he's lost 2 of those fights, very close matchups against Damone Blackshear and then also Jose Aldo, but officially on a 7-fight win streak, pushes a solid pace, averages 5.33 significant strikes per minute, typically looking to mix in his grappling, 1.9 takedowns per 15 minutes. 6 of his 15 wins are by submission. He's a pretty solid striker, but does kind of lack some of that finishing upside, that knockout potential, especially against UFC competition. He has all right takedown defense, 66%, but you look at some of those better grapplers he's gone up against, Ricky Simone, Damone Blackshear, he was taken down twice by Simone, 4 times by Damone Blackshear. So kind of tough in this matchup against Patchy Mix. If this fight was just a pure striking match, I'd probably prefer Mario Bautista. Mix is certainly dangerous. You look at the knee he landed against Rafion Stotts. He has those long limbs. He can certainly land stuff, but a consistent 15-minute striking battle, I probably favor Mario Bautista. But I do think Patchy Mix is going to have a real grappling advantage in this matchup. I think if he can get the takedowns, I'm confident he can rack up that control time, threaten with submissions, land some ground and pound. I think for Mario Bautista, like I mentioned, he is someone who likes to strike, but also shoot some takedowns, kind of keep dudes on their toes. And either he's going to be limited to just being a striker, or he's really putting himself at risk of getting reversed, getting locked in a ghillie by Patchy Mix. If he is trying to shoot those takedowns against as good of a grappler as Patchy Mix, he certainly could run into some issues. So I think Patchy Mix is going to get this one done. I'm going to go round 2 submission. I'm excited to see him in the UFC. I just think for the sake of the weight class, I hope he goes out there. I hope he picks up a win. And a finish over Mario Bautista, this division is a little bit wide open. Corey Sandhagen's probably next, but he could be setting himself up for a main event against a Petr Yan type dude if he can get past Mario Bautista in this matchup. Then moving over to, I think, another interesting fight stylistically, we have Vicente Luque taking on Kevin Holland. Both these guys run pretty rough stretches before their most recent wins. Vicente Luque is only 33 years old, but prior to his KO win against Temba Garimbo, he looked like he was pretty seriously falling off. He had back-to-back losses to Bilal Muhammad. The Bilal fight where he just looked flat, and then he just got, pretty much beaten up badly against Jeff Neal in, I think that was a 3-round fight, but that was a tough fight. Really got beat up bad. Then he had a gross, super clinch-heavy win against RDA. Then the fight against Joaquin Buckley was bad because I think prime Vicente Luque puts up a war against Joaquin Buckley. He really just wilted in that fight. Buckley took him down and started landing some ground and pound, and it was Vicente Luque was all right, I'm done. Get me out of here, no mas. But then he comes back and picks up a club and sub win against Temba Garimbo. Obviously, the level of competition dropped off pretty significantly, going from Joaquin Buckley, who now is main eventing against Kamaru Usman, to Temba Garimbo, who knows, might never be a top 15 guy, but it was still a solid win, especially just how quickly he got it done. On the other side here with Kevin Holland, he had lost 4 out of 5 fights before picking up his most recent win against Gunnar Nelson. I'm kind of willing to just like throw away all his fights up at 185. He's just so like outsized in that weight class. He's so undersized. And like these dudes can just easily take him down. They just control him on the ground. I would prefer that he just stops trying to fight at middleweight because like the performances just end up being really rough. When he's down at 170, which is where this fight is taking place, his takedown defense is just so much better. Still has the power. He has a bigger frame for the weight class, just like, relative to 185. And then like you look at some of his fights at 170, like his most recent ones, even though he lost to MVP and he lost to Jack Della Maddalena, I think it was 30-27 I had for JDM in that fight. It was a split decision. So some people thought Kevin Holland won that fight against the current champion. MVP is just like almost impossible to fight if you're not going to take him down. And so like if you don't have real wrestling skills, it is going to just be so tough to beat MVP on the feet. So at 170, even though he has some recent losses, he has still been very competitive against very, very legit competition. When we look at Vicente Luque here, he has some great submission skills. Like his jiu-jitsu is fantastic, but he's very opportunistic. He's not someone who's going to go out there and try to consistently take you down to set up those submissions. It's like if you're going to wrestle him or if he catches you in a scramble, that's where he's going to lock in his submissions. But the dude only averages one takedown per 15 minutes. In his last 16 fights, he has landed a takedown in one of them, and that was 8 takedowns in that pretty awful Rafael Dos Anjos fight. So Luque is still powerful on the feet. He's active, lands 5.1 significant strikes per minute, but he also absorbs a lot of damage, absorbs 5.2 significant strikes per minute. I'm not fully back on Luque here. I think, kind of interestingly, we saw a fight with Tyron Woodley against Vicente Luque where like Tyron Woodley was pretty much at the end of the road. He had a bunch of bad performances in a row. Usman, Colby Covington, Burns. Then it was like his last stand was against Luque, who I think might have been ranked somewhere in like the 10 to 15 area. And Woodley landed a big shot against Vicente Luque, like rocked him in the first round. Luque came back, hurt him, and then like submitted him in the first round. But like there was a flash where if Woodley lands that punch and Luque goes down, people are like, oh my gosh, Woodley's back, when in reality he just wasn't. I kind of think that's the case here where Luque is still going to be dangerous. He had the power to drop Temba Garimbo, but I think when he's getting in there with Kevin Holland, someone who is going to have a huge frame, is going to hit hard, is not going to be easy to take down, I think we're going to see some of the issues we saw in his previous fights. So for Kevin Holland here, I just attribute most of his like recent losses to being in the wrong weight class and fighting just better dudes than Vicente Luque here. So I think Kevin Holland gets it done, and I think he gets it done by knockout. I'm going to go Kevin Holland by round 2 KO. Now moving over to the Kelvin Gastelum Joe Pyfer fight. This was a matchup that was rebooked from that fight card in March. I think this was the one that took place in Mexico. Joe Pyfer got sick, obviously got canceled, rebooked here. And this is what I said last time. I just think this is a terrible matchup for Kelvin Gastelum. It seems like they're just feeding him to Joe Pyfer here. Pyfer is a big physical middleweight. He hits very, very hard. Also very competent on the ground, has a solid ground game. He's 4-1 in the UFC. All 4 of his wins were finishes. When we look at Kelvin Gastelum's last fight, it was a decision win, very close decision win against Daniel Rodriguez, where he missed weight, and not only missed weight, but like didn't tell D-Rod until I think like right before the weigh-in. So like Daniel Rodriguez was having to eat to get up to the weight that Kelvin Gastelum was going to weigh in at. Just scummy, but also just not great for his outlook that he was the bigger fighter in that matchup. Daniel Rodriguez, not someone who's going to be in the top 15 and like still had a super close fight. And that was down at 170. Now he's back up at middleweight. There's going to be a massive size advantage here for Joe Pyfer. Pyfer 6'2", 75-inch reach. Kelvin Gastelum, a 5'9" middleweight. Not a terrible reach for that height, 71.5 inches, but like still 3.5 inches shorter than Joe Pyfer. I will say Kelvin Gastelum is very durable. He's never been knocked out in a fight, has been hurt. Whitaker dropped him. Izzy hurt him a few times, but he has never officially been knocked out in a fight. I think Joe Pyfer is going to crack the chin. I think he's too big. I think he's too powerful. I'm going to go with Joe Pyfer, round 1 KO. And now we have arrived at the co-main event here, Juliana Pena taking on Kayla Harrison. This fight is not getting a lot of hype. I don't like the way the UFC has managed this bantamweight division ever since the Nunes retirement. I didn't like the initial matchup between Amara Bueno Silva and Raquel Pennington. It seemed like, right, they were bringing in Kayla Harrison. Like, they brought her in to win this title, right? Nunes was gone. They wanted Kayla to be the new champ. But then you make this vacant title fight without Juliana Pena, who at least, like, if she won, would have some credibility because she had to win against Amanda Nunes. So now it just seems like we've just been, like, backlogged where it was like, all right, Pena should have already been fighting for the belt. Then she's fighting Raquel Pennington, probably lost that fight, but no one really cares. And then it was like, all right, Kayla Harrison should have gotten the shot after the Holly Holm one, but now we're backed up because Pennington needs to fight or Pena needs to fight. So we're finally getting the matchup here. I don't expect this to be competitive. Juliana Pena's tough. She's a dog. She has good cardio. She's not going to quit on herself, but she has some awful takedown defense, only 23%, which is insanely bad. She's also been submitted in 2 of her 3 UFC losses. Kayla Harrison is going to have a massive size advantage in this matchup. She was a big 145er, somehow finding a way to cut all the way down to 135. She's going to be way more physically imposing. She's 18-1 as a pro, 6 knockout wins, 7 submission wins. She's still a little raw, kind of stiff on the feet, but it's just an ends to a means to be able to set up her great wrestling. I'm expecting a dominant performance. I think she's going to land the takedowns at will. I don't think Pena has the power on the feet to really discourage Kayla just like sprinting in and just like pretty much bulldozing her over. So I think Kayla Harrison's going to get an early finish. I think the first round she racks up some control time, lands some damage. I think she gets it done in round 2. I can go back and forth between submission and knockout. I think she's live for either. I ended up going with like a ground and pound TKO win. If she locked in like a rear naked choke, armbar, would not be shocked. But I think she's just going to trap Pena and she's not going to be able to move and she's going to be able to finish it with those ground strikes. And then we have officially arrived here at the main event. If you guys want a more in-depth breakdown, I posted a full video maybe like a week ago, half a week ago, specifically for this main event, Merab Dvalishvili taking on Sean O'Malley. So if you want to see the full one, you can check it out on my channel. We're going to have the shortened version here. But I actually think Sean O'Malley is getting slept on in this matchup. I think people remember Merab winning the first fight, and there were like, 3 rounds that he won very convincingly. But this was a 48-47 fight on 2 scorecards. And I think you look at a lot of different factors. A lot of them are going in Sean's favor for this rematch here. First off, he gets an 8-month layoff from that initial fight against Merab to literally just like rest up, be healthy, and just straight up game plan only for Merab. Like, very rare that the champion has to fight someone before they rematch, an opponent who didn't have to fight. Merab had to go through a training camp, had to go through a tough fight against Umar. Sean O'Malley's just been chilling, getting ready for this rematch here against Merab. O'Malley also went into the last fight injured. Merab is already banged up with a broken toe. He's just a dude who's going to overtrain and train so hard that, I think every fight he goes into, there's going to be some sort of issue. The last one, I think he had staph infection. It's always going to be something with Merab, and he still manages to fight through it, but clearly not ideal, especially if Sean O'Malley's coming into this one more healthy than he was in the first matchup. I also just think when you look at MMA history, when you have 2 guys fight and one's a striker, one's a wrestler, I think the striker tends to do a better job with their wrestling defense in the second fight than they did in the first. I think it's easier to improve your defense than it is to improve your actual ability to land takedowns. So I think that's another point that goes in the advantage of Sean O'Malley. And then also O'Malley just has infinitely more finishing upside. You have to be so unbelievably good to consistently win fights when you don't have the ability to finish your opponent. And Merab is that good, right? He's going up against some elite dudes, a lot of guys who do have that finishing upside, and he's, staying out of danger. He's still winning decisions, but when Sean O'Malley can go out there and finish the fight at any moment, that is a point that goes in the favor of Sean O'Malley. And so a lot of this has been pro O'Malley stuff. I want to make it clear, I'm not sleeping on Merab. Merab is an all-time great bantamweight fighter. I think he has the best cardio of any fighter, regardless of weight class, in MMA history. He has an elite resume, wins against Petr Yan, Umar Nurmagomedov, Sean O'Malley, Jose Aldo, Henry Cejudo. He is an insanely good fighter, and I could certainly see a path to him winning this fight. If he went out there, just racked up a ton of control time. I could easily see him winning a very clear decision, but I think O'Malley's going to look much better in this rematch. I think he's going to surprise some people. I trust him and Tim Welch just kind of going to work, game planning for Merab, making their adjustments, coming into this fight healthy. So I think he's going to shock some people, and I think he is going to finish Merab in the third round by knockout. So that is going to wrap it up for my full card predictions. Let me know your thoughts down below. Do you agree with my picks? Do you disagree? Let me hear it. But thank you all for stopping by, and I will see you in the next one.